From Unpacked, this is Jewish History Nerds, the podcast where we nerd out on awesome stories in Jewish history. I'm Yael Steiner.
And I'm Jonathan Schwab. We've been exploring Jews in the Americas all this summer, and we wanted to revisit an episode from not that long ago, from last season, about Ray Frank, who was termed by the press the girl rabbi of the Golden West.
I love that title. I think it is so evocative. Even before I learned anything about her, when you prepared this episode, I thought, she's cool. She's someone that I'm going to want to know. And she turned out to be somebody that I would have loved to befriend. What an amazing, accomplished, spectacular woman, a beloved orator. People clamored to see her all over the country. She imbued everything she did with Judaism in a really traditional way, and yet she was groundbreaking in the way that she, as a woman, was able to teach it.
Yeah. I think she's an amazing character. It's an amazing story and has a whole new meaning as we've been talking about America and how Jewish life developed in America, and especially our most recent episode. This is very close to the story that Ray Frank is involved in. She studies to be a Reform rabbi at a point, although she doesn't finish that. If any of our listeners have access to more historical sources, I don't think we have any responses to how she felt about the Treifa banquet or anything. But it's really, really interesting to look at her story in light of the whole scope of what we've been talking about in the development of American Jewish life, and especially the schism that is coming within Reform, between Reform and Orthodox, and understanding her in that context as well.
I think she's really emblematic of that because she does study at what is now the flagship Reform Seminary, but not too many spoilers. She has real ideological rifts from what that organization represents, and she is very, very focused on maintaining a traditional, unchanged Judaism from the Judaism she grew up with. And yet, what does that mean for her as a woman to stand at a pulpit? And one thing that I think is really interesting, we've been talking about how Jews have moved west as the country has expanded westward. She's the culmination of that. I hope you really enjoy this episode. I love this episode. Let us know what you think. So, Schwab.
Yeah.
Now that I'm all cozy, comfy, settled in
Great.
to hear a great story from you.
You're going to love this one.
Who are we talking about?
We're talking about a woman named Ray Frank. And I want to start with the pivotal moment in this story. It's 1890. It's Rosh Hashanah. It's the high holy days, and this is in Spokane Falls, Washington. So it's the American West, 1890, in Washington State. And Ray Frank, the woman who we'll be talking about today, is there on journalistic assignment. She's in her 20s. She's been traveling around the American West, and she's there to write an article about Spokane Falls, which, like many places she had been to, was a mining boomtown.
Nice.
But being a great young Jewish woman from a traditional Orthodox background, she asks, where can I go tonight for High Holy Days services, for, Rosh Hashanah shul experience? And she's told by the Jews that she asks, we actually don't have a synagogue here, despite the fact that we have, a number of Jews here in the town. She's very disturbed by this, but her reputation also precedes her. And one of the Jews she speaks to says, "Look, if you want to address the congregation, because I know you're a known teacher and journalist, and people will be really interested to hear what you have to say, we can get some people together and we'll make a service if you would grace us with a speech."
Okay. So she has a reputation as a journalist or spokeswoman, orator, leader, perhaps.
Orator is a great term for it, yeah.
And she is clearly traditional enough that she is seeking out a high holiday service.
Yeah.
How in 1890 did a traditional
that's
Orthodox Jewish woman get...
Yes.
You have
immediately
born
hit on
in the Northwest, get
But the question, how did a traditional Jewish woman come to be a renowned orator so that people want to hear her speak from the pulpit? They want to hear her speak on Rosh Hashanah. This isn't like we want to, hear your perspective on the state of journalism. That's like the crux of this episode.
Awesome.
Her life arc is a really, really interesting one. And as you noted at the top, I think has a lot of connections to a lot of people that we have profiled. So she agrees to this, and word spreads very quickly. So the special afternoon edition of the newspaper that was quickly printed had an announcement. There's going to be Jewish services tonight. We're renting out the Opera House, and Ray Fank is going to be speaking. Word spread around town quickly. A very large crowd assembles to hear her. Orthodox Jews and Reform Jews, and that's a tension that we'll get into a lot, and even a number of non-Jews. Such was her reputation that there were a number of non-Jews, Spokane residents, who come out to hear what she has to say. She ascends. Yeah.
This is like the secret Mumford & Sons concert that happened in Brooklyn this week. Like a half an hour before it started, it was announced, and all of a sudden, every hipster I know was there.
Probably, but I feel like 2026 hipsters and 1890s Spokane Falls, Washington residents probably look a lot like each other.
Oh, amazing. Crazy.
So she gets up to the pulpit and she speaks. The title of her sermon is On the Obligations of Jew as Jew and Citizen.
I love that.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, like, we'll talk about her incredible talent to write and give speeches, because it seems like she just was amazing at it. And what she encourages them to do is that they need to address the most pressing issue in their community, which is they need to build a synagogue. They need to build a synagogue because they need to think about their past and they need to think about their future. They need to connect to the God of their fathers, as she refers to it, and they need to create the space so that tradition can be passed on to their children. And she very directly references how they need to drop the dissensions in their community and set aside the differences. And she's talking about the tension between the Orthodox and Reform Jews there. And she's saying, like, very, very directly, stop arguing about whether to don your hats and join hands in prayer. And like stop the discussion of like decorum, or even liturgy, and like focus on Jewish unity.
I love her already. I'm gonna be here for Purim. Amazing.
She speaks again the next morning, and she's invited to speak again a few days later on Yom Kippur, when they again hold services, this time an even larger crowd. And people are so moved by her speech that this is, I'll say this as like an asterisk caveat throughout. A lot of the information we have comes from press about her at the time, and the press of 1890 was a little more prone, I think, to getting excited about things and telling the most colorful anecdotes. So I don't know if we take at face value every single thing that's reported. Is this exactly what happened? But she is approached by a non-Jewish member of the audience, a Christian man who comes forward after her speech in the Yom Kippur address and says, I will donate the land for the building of this synagogue. Here's the space.
That is super intense.
Yeah.
I want to view it so beautifully, but the cynic in me is like, that's odd. So she stays?
Great question. One other thing I want to say about this speech on Yom Kippur, she very directly talks about how sort of odd and rare and groundbreaking this is. She says, now I'm going to quote from the notes that we have from her speech, which are later published by her husband, spoilers. But my position this evening is a novel one. From time immemorial, the Jewish woman has remained in the background, and it is well that it has been so, for while she let the strong ones do battle for her, she has gathered strength and courage to come forward in an age of progressive enlightenment to battle for herself, if necessary. To think that tonight I am the one Jewish woman in the world may be the first since the time of the prophets to be called to speak to such audiences. So she's very aware that she didn't grow up hearing a woman speak from the pulpit. Like, she knows no other woman in the world is speaking from a Jewish pulpit that night. She thinks maybe nobody has done this for thousands of years. I mean, yeah, there's Deborah the prophet,
yeah,
right? Like, who she's very aware of and gets connected to her often. But she didn't speak in a synagogue because there were no synagogues at the time. So like, Ray Frank is like the first woman ever to speak in a synagogue. Although, listen to our podcast, Ray Frank, because we've highlighted a couple characters who might have something to say about that.
I didn't want to cut you off in the arc of how she gets from, arriving in town one day, presumably on a train, to becoming potentially the de facto spiritual leader, maybe?
De facto rabbi
of this community.
This again, that's going to be like the crux of our discussion.
But where was she from?
So she is exactly as you think. She's offered the chance then to lead this congregation. They say, great, we'll build a synagogue. We want to build it around you. We want you to be our leader. She says no. And she says no many more times to that offer, to many other offers. She speaks often from the pulpit, but she never has a pulpit. And it's not because it wasn't offered to her. She always denies it, does not accept the title that others are very willing to give to her. She corrects people when they refer to her as rabbi. And this is like one of the things that's very fascinating and confusing and a little bit contradictory, I think, in some ways about her.
Interesting.
So now let's talk like, okay, where was she before Spokane? She's born in San Francisco in one of 1861, 1864, or 1865, depending on the sources. So
okay, Civil War era.
Yeah, Civil War era, but San Francisco, which is rapidly expanding due to many factors, but mainly because of a gold rush that you probably know the exact year.
1849.
Her parents, who were Polish Jewish immigrants that we would call Orthodox now, they probably called themselves Orthodox even then. Certainly Ray Frank uses that term a number of times. And already at a very young age, it's apparent that she is incredibly talented as a teacher, as an educator. She starts out really, really young, teaching in a bunch of places in the West. She goes to Berkeley for a little bit. She spends a couple of years in Nevada. Her older sister moves to like another, I think Ruby Hill, it's called, like another gold mining town in Nevada. When her sister gets married, she moves with her sister to help with the family, ends up running basically the local Jewish school. This is the sort of person where like every room she walked into, every schoolhouse she entered, everybody like dropped everything they were doing and were like, do you want to be principal of this school now? Whatever vision you have, whatever position we can offer you is yours. Because her reputation preceded her, but also because it was just apparent whenever anybody would meet her that she just was this talented.
This seems like a really seamless transition from
Rivka Ticktinner.
Rivka Ticktinner. And I think that we spoke about in the context of that episode, what is the end goal of women's learning, and whether or not learning in and of itself is of value, and maybe teaching in and of itself is a value. And it seems like Ray Frank is very happy and pleased to share her Torah and her world wisdom with the community, but she very much wants to make it clear that that doesn't mean that she's a rabbi. One can be an extremely learned person who serves the community without officially being at the pulpit as a rabbi of that community. And I think we have a lot of women like that now in the modern Orthodox world. And she seems perhaps like a prototype for that role.
Yes, very much so. I'll add one thing to what you're saying is I think you were very careful of saying like someone can be learned and a great teacher without being a rabbi. she is pretty insistent that a big part of that is because she's a woman, and she has a lot to say about like what the place of a woman is. Again, a lot of connections to Rivka Tiktiner, to other people we've also talked about, and that we talked about in the Rivka Tiktiner episode of like as somebody who balances what we would now call like progressivism and conservatism. Like she has views that we would not call feminist on like the place of women. And it's not the pulpit generally.
But that being said, it's not behind closed doors and it's not behind a curtain. It is
Right.
at the front of a room talking to women and men, presumably.
Yeah. Oh, definitely women and men. Unlike Rivka Tiktiner, who focused a lot on teaching fellow women, Ray Frank does not spend a lot of time like exclusively teaching women. It's very clear that her audience is a wide one of Jewish men and women, and like I said, non-Jews as well, who are very interested in what she has to say.
Did she have any sort of prescribed Jewish education?
She was taught a lot by her parents, it seemed, but she didn't go to a Jewish school, as far as I can tell. She went
I
to
don't think Jewish
to
schools for women
Sacramento High
really
School.
existed
Right. Yeah.
before.
There's no
another woman
Jewish high school for women.
Like this is pre-Sarah Schneerer.
But it's also, this is in San Francisco, so it's pretty far from Poland. Like this also is pretty different from the East Coast. Like the American West has a frontier attitude. Things are developing and changing very rapidly. We could do a whole episode on the Jews in the American West.
Can we watch Fievel Goes West in conjunction?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good. I
think it's about a Jewish immigrant going west in the form of a mouse, if I recall correctly.
Yes. But things are developing more rapidly, and there's a lot more fluidity, as opposed to, I think, a very institutional way of approaching things on the East Coast in very established Jewish communities. Even as tons of new Jews come in, everything is new in San Francisco, and everything is a little more open to change.
And one of the things that I was going to say when you were talking about the rapid trajectory of her rise, so to speak, in Spokane Falls, is that it really is amazing what you can do when you don't have the barriers of institutional Jewry stopping you. These people met a woman who had something to teach and they wanted to learn, and therefore they facilitated a situation in which they were able to make that happen.
Yeah. And I think, like, even yes to everything you're saying, and Jews who wanted to learn, and this is the person who can teach. Like, if you're in Ruby Hill, Nevada, and you want your kids to have a Jewish education, you're not going to quibble about, does this person have the right credentials or lineage? Speaking of lineage, for a moment, her father does trace his lineage to the Vilna Gaon, to the very famous Rabbi Elaj. So that is, yes. So like she does come from a very prestigious rabbinic line. She, after a couple of years in Nevada, returns to Oakland, California, and studies philosophy at UC Berkeley. While she's there, she also teaches part-time in what's called the Sabbath school, what we would now probably call Hebrew school, at a local congregation. And like there too, her classes immediately become incredibly popular. Like she's teaching young kids, but adults also want to hear from her. She becomes the principal of the school very quickly. She's also writing a lot and becoming a more well-known journalist. Newspapers in 1890 were a rapidly expanding industry, not a dying industry. Right. So there were a lot of opportunities, and people really wanted to hear what she had to say. So her career is taking off in a lot of different directions.
And there was nothing from her communal life or family life impeding this track. Like it wasn't, her parents weren't saying, you're a girl, you're a young woman, you can't be off traveling to Spokane Falls for the high holidays. You're supposed to be here with us, finding a husband and having children.
So she's not married, and she does not get married for quite some time. I don't know. We don't have, like, her parents didn't write a memoir, so we don't know what her parents were thinking.
Did she write a memoir?
So we'll get to it.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
she does not write a memoir, but her husband collects her works in what's like one of the best sources.
Good
about
job.
her.
Good husband picking, Ray.
You will. I want to talk a lot about their relationship because it's really interesting to me.
Is it going to depress? Is it going to depress me?
No. I actually think it's a beautiful story, but like we have a while till we get there still. Reportedly, although like big caveat on this, I could not find the actual primary source making sure this is the case. But Gertrude Stein did go to the Sabbath school that Ray Frank taught at. So presumably Ray Frank taught Gertrude Stein. Could not track down like what's the actual source for that this happened.
That is astounding. I love that factoid. That is on par with the Trotsky Frida Kahlo affair factoid.
There's another one coming that you might like even
amazing.
more, but I don't know. You might be a bigger fan of Gertrude Stein.
I'm just a big fan of that whole expat 1920s in Paris.
Midnight in Paris. Yes.
Like, I just want to hang out with Gertrude Stein, Ernest Hemingway, Picasso, and T.S. Eliot, and just chill. Yes, Midnight in Paris.
So again, she's tied into the journalistic world. So this is part of it. But after she gives this sermon, and her career really takes off after that point. The press starts reporting on her breathlessly. They go wild with nicknames. She's referred to as the girl rabbi of the Golden West, the Jewess in the pulpit, a latter-day Deborah, which she's aware of that and references it. She is referred to more than once as the most talked of Jewess of the day, like the most popular Jewish woman in America, which
I mean, low blow to Emma Goldman.
She and Emma Goldman, who we did a great episode on in, I think, season 2 a while ago, they are contemporaries. There's an amazing article on the Jewish woman as celebrity, like around this time. And it compares the way that Emma Goldman is talked about and the way that Ray Frank is talked about. They're both written about a lot. I don't think they ever met each other, but they certainly were aware of each other. Like they, I think, were competing for that like most talked about Jewish woman and presented two very different models of a Jewish woman.
As soon as you started describing Ray Frank, I immediately started thinking that she sounded very similar to Emma Goldman, not necessarily in her
draws
messaging.
Huge crowds,
right?
But totally opposite method. Like whereas Emma Goldman is avowedly secular, an anarchist, is talking about politics. Like Ray Frank, it's always about religion for her, and she's very, very religious.
I give her a lot of credit for knocking Emma Goldman off that #1 perch. That's very impressive.
So she starts basically going on a nonstop speaking tour, and all of scholars have tried to keep track of like where was she when, but it seems like she was just everywhere on the Pacific coast all the time, including up to British Columbia, like just up and down all of these rapidly expanding cities, speaking constantly. She connects with a booking agent / promoter, a guy named Samuel Friedlander in Portland. And he, I think, really, really helps that expand even further. But she's an extremely in-demand speaker. The way that the press is reporting about her, they talk about how rapt the attention of the audience is, how striking her voice is. There's a lot of like very dated, like she's this remarkably beautiful Jewess. And I was like, right, we don't usually talk that way. We definitely don't use the word Jewess anymore. Yeah. But she has like very, very striking dark hair and dark eyes, which is like a very coded way of talking about Jewish women. Because that was, I guess, like so exotic and remarkable. And this is pointed out almost every time. She speaks at great length. She speaks very movingly. She never uses notes. She just always seems like it's completely extemporaneous. She knows exactly what she wants to say.
She sounds unique.
And she starts drawing these huge crowds. She draws a crowd of 7,000 in Portland. And I think a couple of weeks prior or a couple of weeks after, William Jennings Bryan, who's a pretty famous big speaker, also spoke in Portland and did not draw as many people.
That is insane. He gave one of the most famous speeches in American history, and he drew a smaller crowd.
Yeah. I think because it's really more a testament of like how much of a draw she was. Probably part of that is she's a woman and doing this, and like there's something very, interesting and novel about that, but it sounds like she never disappointed.
Is it that it's almost like a freak show? It's like,
well, so that's
women aren't supposed to be able to do this. Like, come see a woman do this.
That's one of the more like skeptical and critical perspectives on her.
How uncharacteristic of me.
Yeah. Her booking agent was like a theatrical promoter, and like perhaps this was being sold as a little bit, I don't know, like the Greatest Showman type of thing. Like
when you said she had a promoter, I immediately, my first thought was like, I really hope it wasn't P.T. Barnum.
Yeah. It wasn't P.T. Barnum, but I think that's what some people are like, oh, Samuel Friedlander's like a P.T. Barnum type character.
He's trying to get a dollar out of this.
Yeah.
More than $1.
So her career really takes off. She is asked this question then multiple times, like, why are you not a rabbi? And she writes an essay in response to this question in a newspaper titled, If I Were a Rabbi. And it's clear from the way that she writes about it that she's from a place, I think, of respect and balance, pointing out the things that rabbis do that she doesn't want to do. And, she insists that she doesn't want this role. And she says being a rabbi is a thoroughly masculine profession. And she says, like, if I were a rabbi, what I would be focusing on is helping the needy and comforting people, not like selling the best pews to the highest bidder. And I think you can read that and be like, wow, that's like a criticism of like what rabbis are doing. But you can also read it and say, like, she's like, that I don't want to do all those other parts of the job. Like there's an administrative element to this job, and I'm not interested in that.
You said her family was Orthodox, right? Did she have any success in Spokane Falls or elsewhere in building bridges between the Orthodox and the Reform?
I think so. They did build a synagogue. I wouldn't say that that's on her. I think she's trying to bridge a divide that's only going to get wider.
Do you hear that, institutional Jewry? All you need to bring together the disparate factions among American Jews
a woman.
Is to hire a woman.
Yes.
All your problems will be solved.
Yeah. While her career is on the rise, this question keeps coming up of like, is she a rabbi? She kind of seems like she's a rabbi, In 1893, she enrolls at Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, which is like the center of the academic center of the Reform movement. Rabbi Isaac Mayer Wise, he's the president of HUC. He's one of the most, if not the most powerful and important Jew in America at the time. He champions her in public, and he writes that she can assist the cause of emancipating women and the synagogue in the synagogue and the congregation if she so chooses. It sounds like he's saying very clearly, like, we admitted her and we were okay with ordaining her as the first woman rabbi from HUC.
But also
people to start calling her rabbi. She again is insistent that she's not, that's like not who she is.
It raises a much bigger theological question or practical question about what is a rabbi.
What is a rabbi?
Someone who has a diploma from HUC? Is a rabbi someone who is responsible for the administrative and pastoral elements of a community, the things that she's saying maybe she doesn't want to be doing? Or is that a CEO? Or is that a social worker?
Personal side note, I don't think I've ever talked about this, but I like to officiate marriages.
That's so cool.
To officiate marriages in New York, you can be, like a judge or a recognized religious leader. To be a recognized religious leader, the New York City Bureau some like City Hall Bureau of
Vital
Certificates or something like that.
probably.
Here are the ways that you can prove that you are a rabbi. You can show your diploma. You can show a list from a graduation ceremony with your name on it, or you can have a letter from a congregation saying they recognize you as their religious leader. So when I was living in an apartment building in Washington Heights that had a number of Jews in it, we had our own minyan at the end of Shabbat. So people didn't have to go all the way to shul. So that little, organized weekly prayer service, we wrote up a couple of letters stating that we recognize Jonathan Schwab as the rabbi of our community, and in my role as rabbi, I would say, okay, now it's time. So let's pray. And then let's make Havdalah.
That is so much of a better story than you just being a universal life minister who got ordained.
Yeah, so right,
like
it's much cooler than just like giving your credit card information to openordination.org so you can officiate marriages.
Just so you know, I will now be calling you with all of my rabbinic questions, and by all of my rabbinic questions,
my rabbinic expertise is very focused in one area, and it's what time does Shabbat end?
And it is an important thing to know. And people do disagree about it.
But that gets to that question of what makes if a congregation recognizes you as its rabbi, does it matter that you don't have the diploma or the training? People see you as a leader, you are a leader.
I often joke there are two women who have both been teachers of mine, but who I call friends, who are both extremely well-known and impressive scholars of in one case, Jewish law, and in another case, Bible studies. And I occasionally jokingly refer to each of them as my Rabbi, because I view them as religious role models. Neither of them is a rabbi, though in a different world, probably one or both of them might have become one. But they're Ray Frank.
Yeah.
Which is really, I'm going to call them after this and tell them about her. Do you know about Ray Frank?
So she
rolls
at Hebrew Union.
She rolls in HUC.
She rolls in HUC. She's really only there one semester. It seems like she took the classes she was interested in and moved on. She does not graduate. She does not get ordination. She wants to get back out there teaching people. Everybody speculates of she was planning on getting ordained, but then when? This is, again, all speculative. Then when Rabbi Wise starts talking about it publicly, she wanted to do it more quietly. She didn't want to be the face of this movement. She never was planning on getting ordained, but wanted to be able to say on her resume, that she went to HUC. We don't know exactly.
It's unbelievable how little the conversation has changed, at least in Orthodox circles. This person has these degrees, has studied with these teachers, has this breadth of learning, but she doesn't want to be a figurehead, and she doesn't want to be the first one through the brick wall, and doesn't necessarily feel as though she needs the title to make the impact she wants to make, and therefore has not done it. And I feel like I've had that conversation about a bunch of really impressive Jewish women in our world.
And at the same time, one thing that she is continually saying, but is a little confusing, is that she says the place of she firmly believes the place of a Jewish woman is in the home and as a mother, but she is still single well into her 30s, and you're saying that's what you ideally want, but that's not what you seem to be spending that's not what your life is right now.
I don't know if you've heard this, but men are allegedly intimidated by powerful women.
So we're going to get to her husband and my take on him. In addition to her, so she's traveling all around. In addition to her preaching and teaching, she's also writing a lot of journalism, and people really like her. And then she tries her hand at short fiction also, and she's in touch with a couple of like prominent writers of the time, including Charlotte Perkins Gilman, who
amazing
tries to recruit. If you're impressed by that, you're going to be even more impressed in a second.
Yellow Wallpaper.
The Yellow Wall, very good. So
very disturbing, very compelling, disturbing piece of writing.
Yes. Yeah. Charlotte Perkins Gilman is an activist suffragist, and she tries to recruit Ray Frank to the cause. And Ray Frank is, and I don't know why this keeps coming up. It's like true of Emma Goldman also. She is not a suffragist. She does not want to advocate for women's right to vote. Seems like she's kind of against it, but she doesn't really think women should be voting.
But Emma Goldman wasn't a suffragist because she was an anarchist. She didn't think anybody should be voting. But presumably Ray Frank didn't have a problem with men voting.
Right. She's like, I don't question the democratic system. I don't like that's not my objection. But she's not a suffragist, so she's hesitant to join certain things. Again, some people like speculative, like she's very careful about her public image, and like that's not the thing. That's not the platform that she wants to get on about.
It sounds like there was another celebrity coming.
Okay, Ambrose Bierce, who's like the preeminent writer of the time.
Pierce with a P.
It's Bierce with a B.
Because I feel like that's a person I have heard of. Okay, continue.
So Ambrose Bierce, who's this like he's the biggest writer of the time. People are reading everything he's writing: satire, essays, short stories. He and Ray Frank have quite the correspondence. It's like mildly flirtatious. Which is interesting because he has this like very acerbic wit, and he's very critical of stuff, but he's very complimentary to Ray Frank, and encourages her to write more short stories, which by a lot of other accounts just were not good. Like finally she tried her hand at something that she was not that successful at. Yeah, you can't be good at everything. Okay, then in the late 1890s, she goes on assignment, like a partially vacation, but partially like journalistic assignment on this trip to Europe. She's close to 40 at this time.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it will become interesting in a moment. She reports from England, where Theodore Herzl speaks in England for the first time, and her report on that is really interesting. She talks about Herzl as this like towering figure, how incredible of a speaker he is, how the crowd reacted to him. It's also the late 1890s, so like everybody in Europe is talking about the Dreyfus Affair, which we should do an episode on the Dreyfus Affair, I think.
I've been talking about it a lot this week. I was watching the men's gold medal hockey, American, U.S.-Canada hockey game on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. And the ultimate hero of the game for America is a New Jersey Devils player named Jack Hughes. But every time they said his name, I just kept thinking Jack Hughes. And it was like,
he's Jewish, right?
And he's Jewish. Like every single time they just kept being like, Jack Hughes, Jack Hughes.
Yeah. Oh, it does really sound like, yeah. So everyone's talking about the Dreyfus Affair in Europe. I think this is like a meet cute. Like she has coffee with this young economics student, much younger than her. He's in his mid-20s. It's like 26.
I'm taking notes right now, yeah.
Yeah. Economics student at the University of Munich about the Dreyfus Affair. And they immediately hit it off and just really enjoy talking to each other. And she comes back from this Europe trip, like, I think already engaged. Like she met this guy and they get married in London in 1901. So again, she's depending on when exactly she, but she's somewhere between 36 and 40 years old. He's 26.
Good for her.
26 or 27. And he's from Odessa originally. And
is he cosmopolitan?
He's very cosmopolitan. He's studying economics at the University of Munich, with the hope of eventually going to America and getting a professorship. And then that's exactly what happens. Like on a dime, her entire life changes. She gets married in London in 1901. He gets a position at the University of Illinois, Champaign, and she becomes Simon Littman's like wife, just professor's wife. And she stops touring. She stays at home to maintain his home on campus. She gets involved in the community there. She steps back from a lot of her writing, and really is like Like, she goes from girl rabbi of the Golden West on a train every 5 hours to speak in another city to domestic homemaker in the Midwest in Illinois, like almost immediately. And it's a very sudden change.
I wonder what Jo March in Little Women would have to say about her, because her big fear about marrying the German professor was that she would stop having to be a writer.
She doesn't seem unhappy with it.
It's great.
I don't read this as like Simon Littman
an unhappy
makes
ending.
her do something. Like this is what it seems like she wanted.
Did she continue to write at all?
So she wrote, but much more sparingly after that. She does start to get involved in Jewish education, like on campus. She notes in some of her writing that she sees a lot of Jewish students come to campus and sort of, like, still relevant today, leave behind the like religious upbringing that they were accustomed to. And she's concerned about this and thinks like, we really need some sort of space or organization on campus and way to promote Jewish education. And she and her husband both are involved in like an iteration of that on campus. So they're both involved in creating an organization on campus and starting to educate Jews, which a couple of years later becomes the beginnings of Hillel, like becomes the first Hillel anywhere at the University of Illinois.
She has changed the trajectory of American Jewish life indelibly forever.
I don't want to like oversell it. Like, she hasn't found the first Hillel, but she certainly is like involved in the group of people that create something that does go on to become that, but also it might be like a Forrest Gump thing of like, wow.
The Forrest Gump analogy is excellent because there's so much overlap there. And then she went to meet the president on TV about her ping pong Olympic medal.
She does not meet the president, but she is the featured speaker. Like when the governor assumes office in Nevada, they're like, what? Who's the best speaker? Who has a Nevada connection? Who's like just would be an amazing get? And it's Ray Frank. And she's like the keynote speaker at the governor's ball in Nevada.
I'm fangirling over her right now. I think I'm going to, we're going to end this conversation and I'm going to be looking for books about Ray Frank.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want a book about Ray Frank, her husband, like I said, so they never have any children. She doesn't talk about this ever. So I don't know, speculate what you want. They live very happily together for close to 5 decades. And she dies in 1948. Her husband, Simon Littman, who was like a prominent professor in his own right, and he like pioneers some areas of study in economics. She dies in October 1948 at the age of 87 or so, depending on what year exactly she was born. Her husband decides to put together, this book, this memoir about her. The title of it is A Life Dedicated. And it puts together a lot of her writings. It's interesting because he tries to go back and tries to reconstruct parts of her life before they met, when she was, kind of a different person. My take on reading it is he has such a different perspective than all the press who write about her. It's clear that he's so loving. It opens with like the moment of her death and, how hard her last couple of days were and how alone he felt when she died. And they clearly had like an incredibly close, loving relationship and connection. But he doesn't seem at any point wowed by her celebrity. And this is like totally my speculation. I'm curious, but I think he just really sees her as a person. And she would speak for thousands and thousands of people. And then she sat and had coffee with this guy who didn't see her like that. And maybe was the one person in her life who didn't see her like that. And he talks about how they would disagree about things. And like, maybe he was the only person who would ever actually argue with her because everybody else was just so taken by her many talents. Like Ambrose Bierce is encouraging her to be a writer. And like Simon Littman in this book is like, her stories weren't so great. I'm like,
in a loving way that espoused.
In a loving,
I love her
in such a loving way.
Stories were kind of boring.
But like this was not what she should have been spending her time on. Yeah. And he's so impressed by her dedication.
Encouraging.
Yeah.
Because I think it's clear that she was multifaceted. And so maybe she didn't need to be. And she was offered positions of power so many times and turned them down. So maybe she needed to be with someone who didn't put her on a pedestal.
And this is like my read on this, but that's what it seems like to me. Of like every room she walked into, everyone would be like falling over themselves to be like, what can we make you? What can we give you? And her husband was like, I see you as a person. I'm like, I'm not like so bowled over that I need to start like offering you anything.
I didn't know that this episode was going to turn into a touching romantic drama.
It is. It really is.
Good on you. Good on you, Simon Littman and Ray Frank. I think you both made excellent choices.
Yeah. But like more broadly, she's just like getting back to the like, what a fascinating character she is. You mentioned this before, like, I forgot what metaphor you used, but I had it in my notes. Is she opened a door that she didn't walk through herself? You know, like she like creates opportunities but doesn't take it herself. I thought a lot about Moses, like leading the children of Israel like through the desert, but he doesn't go to the promised land himself, and that's not his choice. That's a punishment, you know, in the story. So it's a little bit different, but again, it like she sets the stage, even though it will be a number of years until women start being ordained by the various denominations, and we're still in that, I think. But she sets the stage for it.